I've stumbled upon something that concerns everyone. Something so disturbing that falling asleep will forever remain a terrifying ordeal to anyone who knows about it. It's all around us, an omnipresent horror, and yet it's nowhere to be seen. I'm not here to explain it. I'll leave that to someone more suited for the task. I'm only here as an involuntary witness. My awakening, which is what I've come to call it, happened yesterday. I was homesick in my small New York apartment. I was on the couch in my underwear watching the news, drowning in tissues and eating cereal even though it was dinner time. It was a typical sick day for a bachelor in his 30s. That is, completely uninteresting. That's partly why this is so difficult to explain. There weren't any warning signs, not even an uneasy feeling. I went to bed early, expecting the next day to be a repetition of the day that had passed, and I was lulled to sleep by the ambient sound of the New York traffic outside my window. Startled, I woke up to the unusual sound of silence. My heart was beating rapidly, as if I had already noticed that something was wrong. A bluish electric light shone through the window like a lightning bolt had been frozen in time outside. I looked at the alarm clock on my nightstand. It said it was midnight, but I soon realized that the clock had stopped. I felt a bit feverish, but I was clear-headed enough to tell the difference between a dream and reality. The light from outside, combined with the eerie silence, confused me. I got out of bed with a groan. First, I sat on the ledge and tried to collect my thoughts, and then I walked up to the window to see where the light came from. I expected a huge spotlight pointed at my window, but that wasn't it. The strange voltaic light covered the entire city, as far as I could see. But even though the light was everywhere, it didn't seem to come from anywhere. Down on the street, I saw that every car had stopped and been abandoned with their doors still open. Did I miss an emergency alert? I couldn't fathom what was going on. Two people, a man and a woman, stood on the sidewalk. I was relieved to see them, but after watching them for a while, I realized that they weren't doing anything. They were just standing there, like mannequins. I turned on the TV to see if there were any news about what was going on. They were sending live, which was expected, given that the news channel was broadcasting all the time. But the news anchor wasn't saying anything. She stared into the camera without blinking a single time. The blue-white light from the outside illuminated the right side of her face. From the left, something strange entered the frame. It looked like a tentacle, but it didn't have any texture. It was pitch black. It slowly moved toward the woman's head. Its movements were fluid, almost as if it wasn't affected by gravity. Even though I knew that the woman was sitting in a studio several miles away, it still felt uncomfortable being stared down by her, while that thing approached her from the side. I flinched when the tentacle effortlessly, without causing any physical damage, entered the side of her head. It just phased through it. A shadow from something large nearby fell over her, and then she let out a senseless scream of horror. I immediately turned the television off, almost dropping the remote. What the fuck was that? My mind was in a disarray. I looked out the window again. The people were still standing there motionless. I noticed a few more people inside the cars. The traffic lights had stopped, just as my clock. It was as if everything had been frozen in place. I stepped away from the window. A shadow had appeared on the ground. I carefully peeked outside to see what cast it. It slowly moved into view. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a huge squid-like being floating above the ground. I recognized its tentacles from what I had seen on the television. It approached the people standing on the sidewalk and slid two of its tentacles into their heads. They didn't seem to notice anything of what was going on. This time there wasn't any screaming. The couple just took off all of their clothes and walked away, as if controlled by the being floating above them. I tried to see where it was taking them, but they walked out of view. Next, another black squid appeared. It phased through a building, just as if it didn't exist on the same plane of existence as ordinary matter. This made me feel unsafe. It meant that there was no way to keep them outside. They could just float into my apartment at any moment. I sat down with my back against the wall. My thoughts touched upon every possibility I could think of, everything from a sudden onset of insanity to an alien invasion. I crawled into my bathroom and lay down in the tub. It wasn't safer there, of course, it just felt that way. I couldn't tell for how long I stayed there, but it must have been for at least half a day. After that, in a blink of an eye, the strange light shining into my apartment disappeared, and the sounds of the city returned. I picked up my phone and looked at the display until it finally showed 1 minute past midnight. Tired, I climbed up from the tub and looked out the window. Everything seemed to be back to normal. The cars drove by like normal. No one had noticed the mysterious 12 hours that I had just experienced. Except, the couple that had been led away by those beings weren't there anymore. They never returned. As you can probably understand, it felt as if my entire world had fallen apart. I quickly put on a pair of sweatpants together with my stained robe and ran outside. People stared at me condescendingly as soon as I exited the building. I didn't care. I needed answers. Someone must have seen the couple vanish from the sidewalk, I thought. I ran up to a cab and approached the driver. "Excuse me," I yelled, even though I tried to speak normally. "I live next door and, The driver looked at me as if I was a meth addict. I didn't blame him. "Did you see the couple that stood right there?" I pointed at the spot where they had been standing. "I saw them from the window, but—" "I didn't see any couple," the man said. "Are you sure? Because—" "Dude," he said, "I've been staring in that direction since I parked here and I didn't see any goddamn couple." "But they took off their clothes," I said. "How could you have missed that? Look, the clothes are right there." I picked them up from the ground and showed him. "Hey dude, don't bring that trash into my car." "But they were right there," I yelled. "Hey, you there." I turned to a lady waiting for the bus on the other side of the street. "Did you see the couple standing over there?" The woman shook her head dismissively. "Freaking crackhead," I heard the driver whisper before he drove away from me. I felt stupid, even though I was sure I was right. The clothes on the ground proved it. I saw that couple take them off. If that was a hallucination, I thought, the clothes wouldn't be here now. I returned to my apartment and turned on the television again. The news anchor reported on the news, as usual, oblivious of the tentacle in her head that had made her scream earlier. I sat down on my bed and tried to make sense of what had happened, but I was too tired to think. I hadn't slept for an entire day worth of time, and yet no time had passed at all. The only thought I managed to produce before I nodded off was that I had been stuck on some kind of surreal crossroads between this day and the day before. I had no idea if that was a proper way to describe it. It was merely how it felt. After I woke up, in the middle of the day, my experience from midnight lingered in my mind. I managed to think about it a bit more clearly now that I had slept, although I still couldn't make heads or tails of it. It was just as if the entire world had been put on pause during those hours, allowing those horrible creatures to do whatever they liked to us. I left my apartment to get some air. The woman's dress was still laying on the street, blowing across the sidewalk with the wind. Did anyone miss her? Or had she disappeared from everyone's mind, just as she had disappeared from the world? Questions like that bounced around in my head. I stopped at a street corner and looked up at the sun with squinted eyes. This was something more than even the most far-out theory I could imagine, such as an alien invasion. It concerned reality itself. How else could the entire sky have turned into that strange electric blue? The normal sky felt off somehow now. It didn't look any different. But after having seen what I had seen earlier, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was nothing more than a picture projected on a vast screen. It left me with the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped between the walls of a house without an outside. It made me dizzy. I couldn't stay outside because it didn't feel like outside anymore, and I ran home again. Later, as the watch on my wall slowly approached midnight, I considered taking some sleeping pills. I didn't want to wake up in the same strange in-between day as before. In the end, however, I decided against it. I needed to know if it would happen again or if it had just been a one-time thing. So I sat at my kitchen table, anxiously waiting for the final hour of the day to strike. The blue light flooded my apartment the same instant the watch on the wall stopped ticking. It wasn't over. Just moments later, one of the enormous floating squids passed through my living room. I froze in my place as I watched it exit through the wall on the other side of the room. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. I wanted to escape, to run away, but there was nowhere to go. What if they saw that I had broken free from the state of trance that everyone else seemed to be in? Everyone else. I sneaked over to my computer and watched a live broadcast on the BBC. The same thing was happening there. A man had stopped moving in the middle of an interview, but he was still talking. It wasn't English though, but some kind of gibberish. Tower Bridge was visible behind him, and several creatures soared in the air around it. Just to make sure this was a truly global phenomenon, I went to YouTube and clicked my way to a live stream of the Shibuya crossing in Tokyo. All the cars had stopped, and the black cabs reflected the buzzing blue sky. The people either stood perfectly still or walked around in strange patterns. One of them laughed hysterically. A noise came from upstairs. I quickly closed the laptop, afraid that someone might have heard me. It sounded like a struggle. A frail old lady lived in the apartment above. I couldn't imagine her being capable of making those sounds. Worrying that she might be in trouble, and also because I wanted some answers, I decided to sneak up to her floor and see what was going on. The hallway outside my front door was silent and vaguely illuminated by the strange light from the outside. Ascending the stairs, the atmosphere got more and more electric. I slowly approached my neighbor's door and put my ear to it. Her apartment was quiet now. I looked through the letter slot. At first, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but then a flickering shadow on the floor caught my attention. I stood outside the door for a few moments, hesitating, before I decided to try and open it. Perhaps my neighbor was awake just like me, I thought as I slowly turned the doorknob. Ruth? I whispered. I didn't see her, just the strange flickering shadow on top of the Persian carpet. Then I looked up at the ceiling. Ruth, completely undressed, was spinning around at ludicrous speed in the middle of the air. For a few seconds, I just stood there and looked at her in disbelief. But then, which was common for her when she walked down the hallways with her walker, she urinated. The entire room was sprayed with her piss, and some of it landed on my face. I quickly withdrew from there and ran back to my room where I made sure to clean myself. I looked out the window. Was I truly the only one awake, able to see what was going on? I picked up my phone and tried to make a phone call to a friend. I didn't expect it to work, but after about 5 ringtones he picked up. I was overwhelmed with relief. "Yes?" he answered. "Hey man, it's me," I said, but was interrupted. "Yes?" he repeated. "Are you seeing what is going on? I mean, it's like the entire world has turned into—" "I'm a forester, not a historian." Excuse me?" I said, feeling my panic coming back. "Following the direction of the screaming, you'll find the big black moose's head at the entrance of a tunnel." He was clearly not himself. "Come on, man, snap out of it," I said, holding back my tears. "Please return me to my original form. Please." He sounded less robotic now. Did I somehow wake him up? "You there, man?" I yelled. "Stay with me, okay? The muscles of my limbs are stretched to their limits." He was sobbing now, whispering the words into his phone. "Are you hurt, man?" I asked. "Did one of those creatures—" "As I am dying, my internal organs shift inside." He was crying now. "Shit, man." I didn't know what more to say. "Listen, don't go anywhere." I looked around for my car keys. "I'm coming to—" "I can feel them shifting in my flesh, and the sheer mass of it is so great that it shakes the grounds as I stagger and tremble to my feet." I listened to him while I grabbed my car keys from the cabinet in the living room. If only there were a way I could stop the things in front of me. "Well, what?" I said. "What's in front of you?" "The smell of blood surrounds me." He kept talking as if he didn't hear me. "Blood and death. It's everywhere. Bodies of the living are coagulated and blood gushes from their wounds. Are you at your place? Yes? The dullness in his voice was back. Stay with me, man, I said. Don't. I'm a forester, not a historian. What does that mean? I yelled. I'm coming. The only response I got to that was a petrifying scream, and then the phone call ended abruptly. Outside, I immediately noticed the lack of weather. There weren't any winds, and the temperature was the same as inside. The pigeons on the sidewalk had stopped, just as if someone had put them on pause, and a little boy stood in the street corner making jazz hands over and over and over again while blood dripped from his nose. I didn't know how to blend in since everyone was acting erratically, so I didn't even try. I just ran to my car, put the key in, and started the engine. But before I could drive away, the little boy jumped in front of the car, still making jazz hands, and blocked my way. More people gathered around the car, mumbling nonsensical words. I climbed on top of my car through the sunroof. An airplane was frozen in the middle of the sky, and one of the horrifying creatures was leading one of the passengers outside with its tentacles. I had nowhere to go. The people weren't attacking me, but they made sure I couldn't escape from where I was. One of the creatures came floating by, casting its enormous shadow on the street. Did they know about me? I stood on my car's roof, yelling at the people to wake up until my voice failed me. Why aren't you listening to me? I yelled. You're crazy! Someone yelled back. That's why you're in my room, a little girl yelled. Get the freak out, she laughed. Also, this is why I'm still here doing this shit. But you're not saying anything, an old man yelled at me. I sat down and put my face in my hands, giving up my attempts at reaching out to the people. It's hard to say how much time passed while I sat on the roof of my car like this, but I eventually stood up again, ready to jump over the crowd. One of the creatures ominously appeared from beneath the ground, just a few hundred meters away from me. It floated toward me, reaching for me with its enormous tentacles. Although it was moving relatively slow, I would never have been able to run away from it on foot. Its ability to phase through anything made that impossible. The closer it came, the more electricity filled the air. My hair stood on end, positive charges rising through me. I climbed into my car again, turned on the engine again, and, acting purely out of desperation, put it into reverse gear and hit the pedal as hard as I could. The crowd dispersed quickly, but I still felt a small bump under my tires. I didn't have time to think. I wasn't going to let that beast penetrate my brain with one of its hideous tentacles. I swung the car around and zigzagged between the cars in front of me until I reached a relatively empty pedestrian street, where I hit the gas as hard as I could. Two of the creatures phased through the buildings next to me, and several more descended toward me from the sky. I drove around for a long time, hopelessly trying to escape the monsters that relentlessly chased after me. I only stopped once to push a stroller off the sidewalk I was driving on. The baby inside it was wailing, but no sound came from its mouth. I drove past individuals partaking in the most bizarre behaviors I had ever seen in my entire life. The least weird being a young woman in a business suit having sex with an old taxi driver on the hood of his car. From there, it only got worse. A middle-aged man was binge-eating all the fecal matter he could find inside a dog park. A 200-pound man was standing on his head with an eerie grin on his face. A teenage girl was holding her own eye, still connected to her skull, in her hand, watching herself sing a lullaby. Manhattan, as well as the rest of the world, had turned into a living nightmare under the oppressive presence of the black, giant squids. I thought about the people around me and everyone else as well. Tomorrow, they wouldn't remember anything. To them, it would be just as if it had never happened at all. But it did happen. That guy really did fill his mouth with dog turds, and that lady really did have sex with that old man. For how long has this been going on? I had no answers to my questions, just more questions. Have I been acting like this between the days as well, perhaps for my entire life? The thought of it made my stomach turn. I took a sharp turn onto Park Row, aiming for the Brooklyn Bridge. When I got there, I stopped in the middle of it. Several creatures approached me from both ends. There was nowhere for me to go. The East River reflected the galvanizing sky and turned into a shining white silver. I walked over to the edge and grabbed the railing with both hands. For the first time in my life, I contemplated ending it all. A little girl came up to me. For a moment, I thought she would try to comfort me, but all she said was, "As a symbol of Farouk, they used to put me on my knees before I was old enough to drink wine so that I could be taught the true form of Farouk." Listening to her nonsense, I began climbing the railing. The ancient gods have made it so that the world is blind to their power. She didn't take any breaths while talking. The words just streamed out of her little drooling mouth completely unhindered. These gods are both power-hungry and charming. Although these malevolent beings are relentless in their goal to rule everything, none are the true monarch of a ravaged world. They are insidious creatures that impose their will on the living and shape their nature, acting as constant tempters in their perceived petty struggles. This is the true danger of these gods. They work, they speak, they spy, they manipulate, She stopped mid-sentence and returned to the car she had gotten out of. Everyone seemed to be returning to their original positions, spitting out whatever they had put in their mouths and adjusting their clothes. The creatures were almost upon me now. But then, in an instant, the midnight sky came back and the airplanes in the sky shot forward without any need to accelerate, just as if they hadn't stopped at all. And the creatures vanished just before their tentacles reached me. I climbed down on the sidewalk again and burst into tears. The little girl looked at me from the car, just as if she had never seen me before in her life. My friend, who lived near Fort Greene Park, opened his door, surprised to see my exhausted face at this late hour. There were no indications of a struggle. He was perfectly fine. I urged him to check his phone. Confused, he picked it up. "Can you see if you received a phone call from me in the past few hours or so?" I said, hoping there would be some evidence. "No, there's nothing." "God damn it," I said. "I was hoping." "Hey, what's going on with you?" he said with sympathy in his eyes. "Are you all right?" "I'm okay, it's just that, well, I don't even know where to begin, to be honest." "Why don't you try from the start?" he said, and paused the game he had been playing on his Xbox. I told him everything, albeit a bit incoherently. "Are you on drugs?" he said. "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard, and trust me, I've heard a lot of crazy shit." "I didn't expect you to believe me," I said. "But during this day between the days, I really did call you and you picked up. I really thought I got through to you. You said something about not being a historian but a forester." "Wait, whoa," my friend said, suddenly pale. "What did you just say?" His lower lip trembled with a fear I hadn't seen in his eyes before. "Did you just say?" "You kept repeating it. I'm a forester, not a historian," I said. I just now when I was playing video games, I had this deja vu to a dream I thought I must have forgotten a long time ago. I was talking to someone and my body was twisted in some macabre way. It was freaky. There was blood everywhere, and I remember saying those exact words. "I'm a forester, not a historian." "It wasn't a dream, man," I said. "It was me. You were talking to me on the phone and you said those words." He walked over to the window. "I don't see anything out of the ordinary," he said. "This isn't something you would see just by looking through your window," I said. "It's completely hidden from the world. You only experience day and night, not what happens in between." I sat down on my friend's sofa and turned on the news. They were reporting from a crime scene. "Wait, that's outside my place," I said. "What's going on?" There was a picture of me on the screen, wanted for a hit and run. The victim was a little boy. It was the kid making jazz hands. They displayed a city map, showing the crash location and a red line going from my place to the middle of the Brooklyn Bridge. Several police cars were involved in the chase, the reporter said, but lost track of the subject after he exited his car on the bridge. My friend walked over to me. I quickly turned off the TV before he saw my face on it. "What was that?" he said. Nothing," I said. just some car accident near my place. But it wasn't nothing. It was them, the creatures, trying to manipulate everyone into doing their bidding. I'm hiding at a McDonald's right now. I have nowhere to go, chased both during the days and in between them. Nowhere to go except maybe another edge to jump off from. Hello, creepy community. Thank you for watching. This story was written by Tobias Malm. Feel free to check his book about a world where humans never evolved. Find all the details in the description or the comment below. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay creepy and see you in the next story.